Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Let's just wait 5 minutes until the room fills up, and then we'll start. Good morning, and thank you once again for joining us in our October technical workshop. titled Flexibility to the Grid, the Consumer Perspective. I'll start by introducing the webinar's facilitator, who, by the way, is joining us all the way from France. So that's the positive side of having webinars. Mark, thank you for joining us. Mark is the Disruptive Innovation Director at Hager Group, where he heads the innovation activities of the group with a strong focus on e-mobility, energy management and storage, smart grids, DC applications, IT architectures, and the new hot word, artificial intelligence. Mark, before I hand over to you, I would just like to note to the attendees that they can ask questions in the questions tab, or at the end of the webinar, if we have time, maybe we can open up the floor for the attendees to turn on their mics and ask their questions directly. Mark, please take it from there. I think that you have the controls for the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Jinan. Good morning to everybody, and thanks for joining. Topic of today is flexibility to the grid, and this is with a consumer perspective, not on the production side, on the consumer side. And we will see how buildings can provide services to the grid. That's the main topic of today. And let me first start with the global trends. So what we see is that we have three main drivers: resources, we have the cost, and regulations. So resources, we know that classical resources such as oil, gas are limited. And on top of this, we could also speak of the CO2 emission problem. The second point is that renewables are decreasing very fast. And if you take the example of the Emirates, we can now produce the kilowatt hour with photovoltaic installations for less than 2 cents, which is far below the classical production costs. And we see also in a lot of countries regulations that drive the business and technologies, enabling the arrival of new technologies, such as renewable energies more and more, but also storage systems that are financed to make them to make the introduction in the market possible. At the beginning, the introduction of new technologies needs a push with regulations or incentives, because often they are not economically interesting. So we know also that in the Emirates there is a strong push towards solar and wind. And concerning solar, it's very interesting because one kilowatt peak installed produces 1,750 kilowatt hours per hour, which is very high. If you consider Europe, such countries such as France or Germany, we are at 800 to 900 kilowatt hours per kilowatt installed per year. So this is a huge advantage, and it shows that renewables is not a dream. It can be really realistic. The main issue will be to store, because it's a question of, we'll see it later, it's a question of fit between the production and the consumption. That's the main issue. We see also e-mobility is growing, and now the global sales worldwide has reached 2.8 million. The global production is about a little bit less than 100 million vehicles per year. So it's still not a lot, but it's fast growing. And you see Tesla, for example, the Tesla Model 3 is very successful, and it's really it's the number one in the sales of electric cars worldwide. And this is interesting because these vehicles have bigger and bigger batteries. And when you have a range of about 400 to 500 kilometers, you know that you won't drive 500 kilometers every day. That means that you have a capacity, remaining battery capacity, that could be used for other things. For example, support the grid. What we see also, there is a global trend towards electricity, and the future will be completely electric. Today, we have still a lot of oil usage. For mobility, it's mainly oil. For heating, there is still a lot of oil or gas, but the future will be fully electric. And we see already in Europe, there are a lot of new rules. For example, heating from 2030 on in Europe, heating by using internal combustion will be forbidden. So it will be fully electric. That means can be resistive or heat pumps. This kind of systems will be the standard of the future heating system. It's the same for, here I mentioned heating, but we can mention in fact HVAC. It applies also to cooling, which is more specific to the Emirates than heating. You know? So production, photovoltaic, smart grid, that means exchange between the buildings and the grid. Not only buildings will be considered as consumers, but can also support the grid. Same for the cars. Today the cars are consumers, but in the future, when they become bidirectional, they can play a new role in the grid. And same for heating. I will show you this later on, what we can do. So today the classical model is that the electrical system is consumer driven. That means the consumption, the production systems adapt to the consumption profile. And you see on this picture, the blue curve is a typical residential building profile. There is some activity in the morning. Then during the day, there is nobody in the house. And in the evening, there is activity, cooking activity, multimedia activity, lighting, and so on. So this is a typical residential building, a villa profile. And you see in red, this is a PV production. And we see that PV production doesn't fit to the consumption profile of the house. So today, the grid operators and the production plants, energy production power plants, adapt to the consumption. You never ask yourself when you switch on your light if there will be enough energy to power the light. It works automatically. So this is this control chain from the power station, transformer, transmission to substations, and then
Mark, I think we lost you for a bit.
okay. I think I was away for a few seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, Jinan, you can confirm?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, so I will just repeat my last sentence. So what I was explaining is that on this figure you can see the classical distribution, which is consumer driven, and in fact the production adapts to the consumption profile. and we are able to introduce wind and solar, but in some situation can be tough. And for this, we need, for example, in the Emirates, you use a lot of gas power plants. So in fact, these gas power plants are flexible and can adapt to the production easily, which is not the case of wind and solar. I think I lose control. I think I'm not able to go to the next page. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to check what is happening.
If not, just go to the next page so I can continue. Thank you.
Okay,
Next one. Okay, thank you. So energy tomorrow. Today, what we do is local optimization. When you buy your own PV station, your own PV installation on your roof, you can buy batteries. This is local optimization. And what we think is that the next step will be to go from this local optimization, which is called consuming and producing, to flexhumor. Flexhumor is local optimization and global optimization. And that's what I want to show you in my next slides. What are the drivers here? We see that more and more renewables are entering in the electricity mix. And how is this feasible? We are coming from classical power plants, gas, coal, atom. These plants are centralized and they can be controlled. And if we move to sun and wind, we will have fluctuating energy, fluctuating due to weather. Wind is changing, sun is changing. Even if Emirates sun is quite stable, and that's a big advantage. And it's decentralized. You don't have these big power plants. We can have them, of course. We can have wind farms or solar farms, but we can also think that each building will have its own localized production, such as PV. For example, if you have villas, you can think of putting a PV installation on each roof. So that means the introduction of these renewable energies will create a problem of controlling the production and to be sure that we can adapt the production to the consumption. So it's this story here again. So here I put some dynamic tariffs on top of this. So it's the same profile than before. So here what we could do is to change the tariffication rules, because what we see here, I have a problem in the evening, for example, at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, when I'm back home. I have plugged my electric car and I start cooking, and all this is done with electricity. So here, if everybody is doing this, I don't have a problem of energy. I have a problem of power at during maybe 1 or 2 hours. So, and one way to optimize this, to improve this, could be to have dynamic tariffs, to give information to the consumer to change his habits. If the consumer has a battery or an electric car, for example, instead of charging from 7 to 8 o'clock, he can start the charge of his car later on, benefit from better, cheaper electricity, and he will bring a service to the grid, because he will shift this power peak. It's kind of peak shaving. He will shift this peak later on during the night or over the day when there is a lot of PV production, and by this you can optimize your energy optimization, your energy management, sorry. In fact, we consider that not only the production has to adapt to the consumption, but we can modify the consumption profile to make it easy to fit to the available production. That's the idea behind. Huh? So this is in fact a kind of Tetris where you have to find the right profile and to make the both production and consumption fit one each to the other. So in these flexible systems, in fact, the consumer, which is today passive, I just switch on my light switch and I hope I get energy, and it's the case. So in the future, this consumer become active. And we see here the idea is to shift consumption. No? For example, here when we have this production peak at noon, we can maybe increase the absorption by shifting some loads, flexible loads, and we'll see which kind of loads are the most interesting. But for example, the electric car is one example. If the electric car is there, it's much more interesting to charge the electric car at noon, because in the building there is less consumption, and so the car can benefit of this overproduction compared to the building needs. So this is an example. And if the car is full, or if I have a stationary battery in my building, I can, in the evening, when there is this peak, the evening peak, I can empty or discharge my battery or discharge my car. And in fact, by doing this, my consumption profile comes nearer, closer to my production profile. That is a PV profile here. So that's the idea. And of course, for this, to make this work, here it's not only technique, you have also to have business models. You have to create this incentives with dynamic tariffs so that the behavior of the consumer changes. If you don't change the tariffication rules, nothing will change, of course. Yeah. So now I would like to give you some examples on how this can work. So I give the examples of what we are doing in Germany and France, but of course electrical grids are working in the same way. So what I'm describing here applies to most of the country in the world, and it's really the same story in the Emirates. Maybe the main difference is the cost of electricity, because you have very cheap electricity cost. The other big difference is instead of heating, you have more cooling systems, and you use a lot of electricity in cooling buildings. And we see also, I was in Dubai in March. I was surprised there were a lot of electric cars now in Dubai. So you have the same trends about electric cars than we have in Europe or in other countries. So here what we can see is a complete chain from the grid to the loads. And speaking of flexibility, it makes sense for big loads that are flexible. So I won't optimize the fridge. A fridge is consuming 100 watts, which is nothing. Or lighting, especially when you use LED lighting, the consumption is very low. But what is interesting is all about cooling or heating. So cooling in Dubai or in the Emirates, cooling is a big energy consumer. And in the future, with the electric cars, this will also become a very big energy consumer. And by chance, these loads are flexible. So here I've listed 3 loads. I have the electric car. I explained before that the batteries are becoming bigger and bigger. For example, if you have a range of 500 kilometers, the battery will be about 100 kilowatt hours. You need about 20 kilowatt hours to drive 100 kilometers. So if you drive 50 kilometers per day, you have a lot of energy in your battery that can be used to support the grid or to power your building. So here we can imagine with a car that during noon you charge your car with PV, with cheap energy, PV energy, and you can use it in the evening when it's dark, when there is no more sun, and when the grid needs to be supported. You can do the same if you have a stationary storage system. That's the second point. So the difference with the car is that this battery is in the building, it's part of the building. And we have still, especially in Germany, there is still a big market. We have now 200,000 single houses that are equipped with a stationary storage system. And if you combine this with local PV, you can increase your autarky level of the building. If you have just PV on the roof in Germany or in France, you can reach 20 to 30% of self-consumption. And by the way, autarky of the building. Autarky means when I have 20% autarky, I buy only 80% of my electricity from the grid. And with the battery, you can go up to 70, 80%. That means I produce the energy I need by myself up to 70, 80%. And the rest, the remaining 20%, is local optimization. And the last one is HVAC, cooling or heating. And there is also a tank associated to these devices. And that means there is some inertia. That means if I stop my cooling system, maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes, it won't be a problem. You won't have comfort of the people in the building will not be decreased or degraded. Yeah. So the idea here to provide flexibility to the grid is to play with these flexible loads, and some of these loads are even reversible. So whether you can stop, for example, cooling, you can stop a few minutes and then restart. Electrical storage, you can stop charging the battery or you can discharge the battery. Same for the electric car. You can charge the car, you can stop charging the car, or you can discharge the car. Discharging the car, this will be a future feature. But today you can still stop the charging of the car or decrease the power. That's interesting with the electric car. When you are cooking, you have no flexibility. If you use an electrical oven or electrical cooker, when you want to eat, you want to eat. You don't want to wait that there is enough sun or to be able to cook your dinner. With the electric car, it's not a problem. You can stop. What you need is you must be ready the day after in the morning. You need to be able to drive your 50 kilometers, but you don't care if the car has charged at 9 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. This is not important. And you can, so this will provide a lot of flexibility. So then, of course, you need, and that's what is shown here. Here you have the complete information chain starting from the grid, because in fact the grid is demanding for flexibility. And so you can imagine that the grid will send an information. This can be dynamic tariffs. This can be power limitation. At the end, it has to do with money. If there is no interest in decreasing my consumption or sending energy to the grid, I won't do it. I will do it if I get something for it, and something is money in this case. So if you get benefits out of reducing your power by having cheaper tariffication, or maybe no penalties, we can see it also negatively. We can see it positively with incentives, or negatively with penalties. Both are working. So if I exceed power limits, I will get penalties. If I go down, I have cheaper tariff. If I send energy to the grid, I get money for this. So these are the basic ideas, and this is important to have a business model to support this. If not, it won't work. It's just nice technique. So the grid sends information to the building via the meter. So here I have two examples, German one and French one. We use smart meters. In Germany, they have also a smart meter gateway. So, and this system will send informations to a device that we can call energy management controller. Sometimes it's called also HEMS, home energy management system. But the idea is that it is a kind of brain of the building, getting information from the grid, getting also information from the local production. When there is local PV on the building, you have the local production. You can also make predictions of production that are weather-based. For PV, for example, it's quite easy to predict the production based on the weather forecast. And you can also predict the building consumption based on self-learning algorithms that can help you to predict what will be the consumption of your building in the coming hours or coming days. And if you combine all this, you can know, you can optimize the energy management of your building. And you can allocate, you can decide when it's the best time to charge your AC tank, when it's the best time to fill the battery of your electric cars, by optimizing both the local resources and the local needs and the global needs of the grid. That's the idea behind. And it was typical. The typical example is at the evening at 7 o'clock when you are cooking. Here you stop the charging of your car, or even you can discharge the car or your stationary battery in the grid to help the grid to pass this peak. So here's the example of an electric car. That's a project we did with Audi. And we have three functions here. We call this project smart charging, EV smart charging, electric vehicle smart charging. We have three main features. We have the local overload protection. That means when we are close to the power limit of your abonnement, we can we drive down the charging power of the car to avoid the blackout of the building. The second function is PV first. Here we compare the PV production of the building with the consumption of the building. And when there is more PV production than energy needed in the building, we activate the car. We tell the car, now it's interesting for you to charge because I have an excess of energy. And the third one is more sophisticated. This is based on forecast, and we can also add dynamic tariffs. What I can say is that this is already dynamic tariff ready, but dynamic tariffs are not available today, not in the Emirates and not in Europe. But we think that this will arrive in the next 2 to 3 years. We'll have dynamic tariffs. And the idea of dynamic tariffs is to have what I explained before, is to have when there is, for example, at noon, when you have a lot of PV production, then you propose attractive electricity price. And on the opposite, in the evening at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, the electricity becomes much higher. And this is to modify the behavior of the consumer. So here, this is what we did with Audi. This will be available next year. You can have this on the Audi e-tron, and other cars will have the same features. Here we have. This seems very complicated, but it's bidirectional electric car. So it's called what we call vehicle to home, vehicle to grid. It's V to H, V to G, or V to X, if you are generally speaking, because you could also think that going from car A to car B. So here we did this this project, and here's the flexibility vector is a car, as I explained before, and here we are discharging the car in the building, and same idea. We use here a lot of communication protocols, such as ISO 15118 between the charging station and the car, and we communicate consumption or consumption production profiles to the car. We can communicate tariff profiles to the car, and the car can then build his own charging plan based on this. And it's a kind of transaction between the building and the car, because the charging station don't control the car. The car is autonomous always, but you can make some recommendations to the car, and these recommendations are based on availability of PV electricity or attractive prices. And these cars now are able to, you can plan your travels. For example, when you drive every day 30 kilometers to your office, you can have a default setting of 30 kilometers. And if in 2 days you have to travel 200 kilometers, then you have your app for your car. You enter 200 kilometers in 2 days, and then the car, if you can tell him that tomorrow there is no energy available because you need it for your building, but the day after you have a lot of energy coming from your PV installation, the car will wait then 2 days to charge his 200 kilometers. And in that way you can optimize, and this will also be beneficial to the grid, of course. So of course, if you do this at the level of one building, it's not very interesting for the grid operator. But the idea is to create to aggregate a lot of buildings having this feature, having this intelligence. And when you do this aggregation, you can create a so-called virtual power plant, because you can have a lot of flexibility. If you have 1,000 buildings having these features, or several thousand buildings, it becomes significant. And here we see that this is the so-called what we call smart grids for several years now. But this can become reality, and you need to put in place. It's all based on communication between grids and buildings, and the buildings have of course to be equipped with intelligence, this energy management controller, and these devices that are able to provide flexibility. So this could be a transition to help the integration of more and more renewables, to help the integration also of electric cars, because electric cars are not only new consumers, but can also be service providers to the grid by participating to this virtual power plant, because their big capacity, storage capacity, can contribute to this virtual power plant. So in summary, what did I explain? The idea is to use the main loads with high inertia that can be turned down, stopped, or activated. Also that are reversible. That's very interesting when the consumer are not only consumers, but also can be energy providers. So we use the local production, PV. For buildings, it's mainly PV. We don't use wind on buildings. And we have all the storage systems that are arriving. whether mobile on the cars or in the building, stationary systems. What is interesting with the cars also is that cars are mobile, so it's a new way to transport energy also. For example, if you have charging stations with solar, for example, carports. Imagine you have carports at your office. You can charge your car at the office and use this energy in the evening when you're home, for example. So you can have new use cases that appear with such systems. So today, where are we? So this flexibility idea is now, at least in Europe, I don't know the situation in all countries, but it's in discussion, and there are a lot of also standardization groups working on this topic to see how this can be deployed. What we see also is that the share of renewables is increasing, and there are very ambitious plans to go on with this renewable introduction. So we can imagine that in a few years, the major part of electricity will be produced by renewables, because there are rules to push this, but also it becomes very attractive from an economic point of view. With 2 cents or less than $2 per kilowatt hours, it's hard for other energies to compete. It's by far the most attractive. So if we solve the problem of storage, we have really a nice solution. We see also that payback improves because producing, I mean, the assets are decreasing, the price of the installations of the hardware of batteries, and there are new technologies coming for batteries. For example, solid-state batteries are coming. This will be a disruption, a price disruption, and this will make this technology more accessible to most of people. And of course, energy transition related to CO2 reduction. What has to be done is, I spoke about business models. Today, there are no working business models because there is no market for this until now. And this has to be prepared. And there are also a lot of activities to define this business model, to create these incentives, to modify the behavior of the consumers. We are doing some tests at present. There are a lot of tests, flexibility tests. We are participating to flexibility projects with grid operators, with car manufacturers. So at this stage, we are in the phase of a field test, testing this flexibility on a larger scale that only a proof of concept. So now we have reached the field test. That means that we can imagine that this will be in the market in, let's say, in the next 3 to 5 years, I guess. We see also the V2Home or V2G cars arriving. There are still some cars able to do this. Tesla is ready for V2Home, and I know that other big car manufacturers are working on this. And here again, also a lot of activities in the standardization groups to define the standard to make this V2X possible. And the cars, the first cars, European cars on the market will arrive in the next 3 years, maybe even earlier. So, and then we have still some flexibility offers in some countries. I know in the UK, there are some energy providers offering flexibility offers. That means dynamic tariffs, also in Austria. But for the moment, we cannot say that it's a big wave. And here we are waiting on the big utilities to offer this kind of yes, dynamic tariffs to their consumers. But I guess this will arrive also in the next 3 to 4 years, because 3 to 5 years, sorry, because it's also related to V2X, V2Home, to make this possible. And we see that there are a lot of new players in the electricity, such as oil companies, such as car manufacturers that want to sell electricity in the future, and they will propose also new concepts to bring flexibility in the grid. And then maybe the step after this will be to have the hydrogen world, and then we can rethink completely the electrical system. But I think this flexibility on consumer side will be a transition to maybe the next big model that will be hydrogen based, because with hydrogen you can think of having a big energy tank that you fill with renewables, and you can use it when you want, when you need. But this will take time, I guess, because there is a lot of infrastructure, a lot of cost, and the technology is still not, I think, good enough. You have also problems with efficiency, because the hydrogen chain has a very low efficiency, about 30–40%. But it seems very interesting as a next step. But before we can increase renewables and combine this with flexibility on the consumer side. So I think I'm, yes, not completely through. So this is just a picture of the global ecosystem. What is interesting to see here is that until now, the mobility and the buildings were completely separate. And now we see all this coming together because it's all about electricity. And we see that the system is going from the grid to the electric car, to the mobility. And in between, you have the buildings, you have the consumers, you have production. All this has to be linked with power, but also with data and communications. So I'm through. Thank you for your attentions. And if there are questions, I will be happy to try to answer them. And I think we can have written questions, or we can even have a direct discussion, I guess. Jinan, I give you the floor.
Mark, thank you very much for your presentation. I did see that we have some questions in the questions tab, so I'll ask those. And then if there's anyone who would like to, to unmute themselves and ask Mark a question directly, that would be fine as well. Okay, so this is the question. How easy will it be to balance an EV owner's need for range when they want it with the grid's desire to charge and discharge the EV battery at will?
How easy it will be to do this?
Yeah, he's asking about how easy to balance an EV owner's need for range.
Most of the time, the problem is a problem of power and not a problem of energy. So it's a question of choosing the right time when you charge your car. Most of people, when you have an electric car, which is not the case of the majority, but this is going on. When you arrive at home at, I don't know, at 6 or 7 o'clock, you plug your car, and then the car charges. And then maybe an hour later, you are preparing your dinner. You need a lot of energy, and then you have a problem of power. You have a power peak. So here, in this example, the idea is just to shift the load of the car, because when you arrive at 7 o'clock, and you leave in the morning at 7 o'clock, for example, you have all the night to charge the car. And by shifting this charging of the electric car, you will simplify the job of the grid, because you avoid this peak. So it's a question of timing in this situation. It's load shifting.
We got a comment from Saeed. He says, electric load profile for residential in the afternoon due to AC, so so it coincides with solar generation.
That's
Someone
correct.
yeah.
That's
Someone
correct.
their hand up. Okay.
You're right. In that's specific to let's say in the Emirates, you need a lot of AC, and then it's right. The profile of the AC fits naturally to the profile of the PV production during the day, but you have the problem during the night. In summer, you need the AC all the night, and then there is no sun during the night, and then you need the grid. You need the grid, or if you have a big battery, you can or you have your car. You can imagine using your car. I agree that it's a lot of energy. AC is consuming a lot of energy. It's several kilowatt hours over the night, but it can, there is no one solution for everything, but at the end, it's a combination of different things. And flexibility on the consumer side is a contribution. It's not the solution. It's a contribution to the solution.
Thank you, Mark. We have another question. The question is, do you see V2H and V2G in the near future here in the UAE?
I think in the UAE, it's very, very interesting to have this because, again, if you have very big batteries in the cars, so 100 kilowatt hours, you can charge them easily over the day because, as you said, there is a lot of sun during the day, and you have to power the AC, that's clear, but you could have some remaining capacity for the electric car. And then the car could play the role of your home power plant over the night. Because when you have 100 kilowatt hours, imagine you dedicate the half for your house, it's 50 kilowatt hours. With 50 kilowatt hours every day, you can power your AC over the night. So I think yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have more questions?
I'll chip in for a question to you, Mark, as well. So my name is Jason John, and I'm from the Emirates Green Building Council as well. Just another question on what you had mentioned towards the end of the webinar on the hydrogen economy. So we know that in probably not the near future, but the future, that it is expected that hydrogen will eventually start replacing or start becoming the new energy source or usage for energy generation. So in terms of that, like, why aren't we putting more efforts into making that sort of more efforts into making that possible, as opposed to doing this sort of in between flexibility that we're looking for within the grid?
Yes, thank you. The first thing, hydrogen is not a source of energy. It's a storage media. It's just a way to store energy. It's a chemical storage. You store energy with gas. It's a gas that contains energy. When you make it react with oxygen, you get electricity. I think this could be the future of energy, and I think countries such as Emirates with a lot of sun could play a very big role in this new world, because I could imagine that today you extract oil from the earth and you ship it overseas to the entire world. I think tomorrow the business model of your countries could be to produce hydrogen, because you have a lot of sun to do this. You have a lot of room to do this, and send this hydrogen produced in the Emirates to the entire world, maybe using the same transportation means. So I think really there is a huge potential in hydrogen because this will provide flexibility because you can fill the hydrogen tank with renewables. You don't care how fast and when there is energy. When there is energy, you produce hydrogen and you store it, and that's it, very simple. And this could be done with a lot of production means. And then you use energy. If you need a lot, you take more gas. If you have small consumption, it's less gas. So we could imagine a big tank or a network of tanks that are connected each other, and they are providing energy to all the planet. There is a lot of research activities on hydrogen, but the topic is quite complicated, and I don't know how fast hydrogen will arrive, but having this worldwide network of hydrogen with production, with distribution, and so on is not that simple. And I guess this will take several years to put all this infrastructure in place. There are also some technical issues with hydrogen. Today we are at the prototype stage of field test, but there is no, I don't know any application at a large scale. I don't know cars using this except some prototypes. The only use cases I know are remote buildings in mountains where they use hydrogen. So it starts, but again, technically there are some problems to solve, and the efficiency is not very good. I mentioned about 30% efficiency. That means you need a very high production capacity to compensate this, or you need to, because you create also heat. If you are able to use the heat that is produced during the entire process, you can improve the efficiency of the system. But you need to recycle the heat. It's fatal heat. You need to do something with this. So to summarize, there are a lot of people working on this topic, but I don't know how fast this will arrive. I cannot imagine that it will be before 10 years or 20 years that this will be available on a large scale. But it's difficult to say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Jason. I'm just gonna check one final time if we have any questions. Okay, it seems that's it. Once again, thank you very much, Mark and Hager, for this very interesting webinar. And everyone, before you leave, last month we published the Green Building Market Brief. I'm not sure if you've had the time to take a look at it yet, but if you haven't, it's under the Publications tab on our website. And there we have included very interesting findings that we found during our six-month study of the green building market here in the UAE. So we have the number of buildings certified under Istidama, under LEED, under Bajil and Ras Al Khaimah, all of these very interesting numbers. So please do check that out under our on our website. And also this month, we will also be publishing another study, this time on deep retrofits. So if you are interested, please sign up to our mailing list and we will send you information on the launch event and also a copy of the study once it's out. We will be sending a recording of this presentation hopefully after we finish, and it will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to share it with anyone, maybe just give them the link to the YouTube channel. And that's it. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us from France, as I said earlier. I wish everyone a good week ahead.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.